So welcome back, everybody. And today I have Enna Reittort back on the show. And our topic, of course, will be the technogods and end times and what that is all about. I'm very happy to have Enna Reittort back. A lot of you said that in the comment section, have her back. And here we are. So, Enna, welcome to the show. And how are you?
I'm fine, I think. I'm up to my neck in another book. So it's yeah, I mean, and each one is an adventure. I never know where these things are going. So it's great fun. But anyway, I'm glad that your tribe wanted to have me back, and I'm honored to be on again. So yeah.
Yeah. So, when we talk about end times, of course, that is a concept that is not foreign to us. We have it in the biblical sense. We see it in Hinduism with the different yugas. We see it, astrologically, you have different planets in different spaces, and depending on where they are, the entire thing gets a different taste, a different feeling. So, but in general, end times has a connotation of fear. You know what I mean? And so where is that coming from? Is it really that dramatic to transit from one cycle to another, or would you say that is fear-based programming?
Oh, I'm sure there's an element of fear-based programming. I mean, I consider, well, especially the Judeo-Christian scriptural texts to be, apart from many other things, I think they're also predictive programming.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, this whole business of eschatologically, waiting for the second coming of the Christ and, all that kind of thing, it's all predictive programming to organize people's beliefs in a certain direction. Again, in the context of your favorite savior program. So, yeah, I mean, that's what it's about, and especially in the Judeo-Christian tradition, since they don't use the idea nor the reality of reincarnation. Well, basically, you've got one life, and then if you've messed it up, or you've been a good girl or a good boy, then you're going to be there for that judgment day at the end of the end times. So yes, it is a dramatic form of speech, and at the same time, I think, many people feel like we are in a certain kind of end times. So of course, the biblical people are going to interpret it in that particular, in the framework that is familiar to them. But, we can use the term in a way that also fits. Well, for me, it was clear that that was the appropriate term for this last sort of final god, who, in the way that I envisioned, the progression of gods from Mesopotamia through the Hebrews, and then through Rome, and then it becomes secular religion of money god, and science god, and medicine god, and war god. It seems that all these different strands, different styles, or different flavors, or different themes of religions, both the religious religions and the secular religions, they all converge, especially in our era where technoscience has become, the solution for everything in people's minds. And so it has to be a techno-god that then groups all the others together, the god of money, the god of war, the god of religion, the god of everything. And they're talking about creating a new religion, a single religion for the whole world. And it will be under the aegis of AI. And AI is apparently already busy, generating this religion. So, yeah, I mean, it looks very much like the end times of a particular game of the gods or the game of the high priests. And we're coming to the end of it. But at the same time, while there are a lot of people who are going around in a state of panic, a lot of people who are in a state of sort of zombie absent-mindedness, there are lots of us who are feeling completely serene inside. As if there's part of us that is already beyond these end times. And we have not needed a savior to come and do it for us. It's, I think some of us already have a pre-consciousness of what comes next. But before we get to what comes next, we have to have the end times of this particular load of shit that we've been in for the past millennia. I don't know if that's a satisfactory answer, but yeah.
Yeah. But would you say that because my take on it is, yes, we are in a cycle where everything is upside down. I guess many people would say that equates to the Kali Yuga. And but we are now getting out of it, but it doesn't mean that because we are in the process of getting out of it, that everything is hunky-dory and there will be no problems and no things that might scare us. But I wouldn't, I don't have visions like total end of the world and
No.
what have you. So no. And I would like to know, how do you see that, this process of ending the cycle?
Well, the ending of the cycle, it has to be pretty explosive because there's a sheer accumulation of, well, evil, negativity, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, the perversion against nature, the perversion against kids, the perversion against, health, intelligence, I mean, you look everywhere you look, things are, it's not just distorted, they are upside down, as you say. But at the same time, this is the logical conclusion of what has come before. It's just, there's also the acceleration of the energy of time that is happening, that's sort of scrambling all this together. So, of course, for somebody who doesn't have, that inner space to sit back and feel the real reality that is underneath all this mess, it can be pretty overwhelming. So, for a lot of people, I do think, they are perceiving this as end times, whatever their system is. But basically, we have to go through it's like having the very high fever. And after a few days with the high fever, well, your body has processed whatever needed to be processed. And it's, taking out all the toxins. So we're purging the toxins. And then, after that, we'll discover a new state of health, a new ability to rebuild the world in a way that is more, organically harmonious. We're going to have to reinvent so many things, so being in this state of end time it's a balancing act for each one of us. I mean, we are in these sort of jumbled sort of crisis, condensed time, space, whatever. So we're sitting, there's one foot in that space, and then there's the other foot that is already in what comes after, that we don't yet know. But because, if we have given ourselves a perspective on all that's been happening before and is culminating now, well, at least we know what we don't want. We know what is not right. I think, we've developed a sense of morality that we may have had naturally millennia ago or centuries ago, depending on the country or whatever. But that sense of morality may have been kind of innate, but it needed to go through all sorts of horrible things in order to, like you need to temper the steel to make it really hard, to make it really work. And so, we're now in a very privileged position, actually, to be able to see, not just to see and complain about the bad stuff, but to be able to analyze it at different levels, intellect, emotion, what have you, and to elaborate a better ethical framework for ourselves and for the planet. And so, there are a number of people who are saying that this whole thing that we've been in, this compression since 2020, has actually been like the opening of a gateway that was not open until then. As long as we were living in business as usual, at least, in the Western world.
On the surface, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we were not having access. We may have felt that there was something else, but we did not have access to it. And suddenly there is this monstrosity that starts hitting us. And the monstrosity, it is like the process of initiation, where you have to have something really big happen to you that is going to crack open your ordinary mind. And so, my sense is that that is what has happened to us individually and collectively. And I think many of us are sitting on that sort of edge between the old world that is crumbling and it's hitting very, very hard with everything it has. And at the same time, there is this serenity that we're already ready or getting ready for what comes next, where we will be the authors.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm answering your question, but that's
yeah. Do you have the feeling, and especially this year, I have to say, not that it wasn't, like 21, 22, and it wasn't recognizable, but especially this year, I had the impression there is a quickening going on. I can't believe that it's already October. And it is not because I'm older and I'm not, no longer waiting for the summer holidays and it feels like forever until they come. That is not what I mean. Do you have that impression as well?
absolutely, absolutely. And I think, all of us who are sitting on that edge, we all feel that. The time is all sort of scrunched up. And this is what I mean by the energy. I mean, time basically is an energy. And we create it. And okay, there's all the elements and the stars, and I mean, there's all sorts of forces that create it. But I think in our willingness to go through this bullshit and to get prepared for what comes next, we're also contributing to this scrunching up of time. I think nobody of us wants this particular phase to stretch out, and to be very, very slow and very, very long. And it seems to be the same with the powers that want to rule the world. They are accelerating the time frame of their policies also. I mean, the way they're throwing all sorts of stuff, accelerating, the 2030 thing is now 2025. I mean, everybody's accelerating everything. Let's get this thing done,
Yeah. So one thing that I find very important, and I read it again in your book when I was preparing for this interview, that the brain does not equate the mind, and that a lot of people are under the assumption that the mind is the brain. So can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, that is something that I've discovered as being absolutely real in contemplative practice, and I talk about it in the second book. So, I mean, we know about the ego mind, and a lot of spiritual people are having a hard time, getting the ego mind to shut up, and trying to destroy their ego, which is, it's useless, because that's not the way it works. But the problem is, the ego mind is only a small part of our mind. And it is the part of the mind that has been conditioned by trauma, by propaganda, by education, whatever. And as long as one is living with those conditionings, and it takes forever peeling that onion, because the conditionings, they are there in layers and layers and layers from this life and previous lives and what have you. So, but once you start peeling them away, that ego mind starts relaxing. And when the ego mind relaxes, you start discovering that there is a greater mind in which what we call the heart, with its own intelligence, its emotion, but it's not only emotion in the sense that we understand psychologically. There's also emotion that comes from unknown parts of us that experience things from the subtle world, things that are incomprehensible. And they bring tears to your eyes. And they're not tears of sadness, they're tears of reality.
Joy.
Now, it can be joy, it can be, for me, it's an emotion that has no name, because it's neither sad nor joyful. I don't know how to qualify it. It's just, there is this sense that, the reality, the real reality that we cannot see in 3D, the real reality is there. Now, when the greater mind is the gateway of the ego mind that limits our ability to be present to reality, when the ego mind softens and you start feeling this greater mind is connected with everything around, with everything within, and the heart, the intelligence of the heart and the intelligence of up here work together. Up here is no longer domineering over the heart. And then one discovers that there is the particular way of knowing of the heart, which is also combined with the way of knowing, the way of expertise of the body. When all these things start working together, well then, for me, this is a thing that feels like a greater mind. Is it the same as the soul? Is it the same as the spirit? I don't know. I'm not a theologian who wants to go and speculate on those things. For me, they kind of go together. So, but when that greater mind is activated, then it becomes possible to know about things without having to go and consult big fat scientific books. It becomes possible to know directly, in communication with a butterfly, a cat, a tree, lots and lots of things. It becomes possible to communicate beyond language, beyond the limitations of the human language that we use. So,
yeah, in fragments, we even have that today. Let's say, as a child, sometimes your mother gives you a look, a certain look, the way she looks at you, and you definitely know you shut up talking now or you are in trouble. And she didn't say a word. Yeah, so we have remnants of that, but I agree. If everything is in harmony, it would be, yeah, a little bit bigger.
Yeah, and I think, we are living in these end times. This is precisely a great opportunity to get the different parts of us that have been dissociated by our conditionings, to bring them back in mutual cooperation. And this is the foundation of health and of happiness and of creativity and of all the good stuff that we want.
Hmm.
And then on discovering who the hell we are.
So, what exactly are technogods? When you say that word, what are you referring?
Well, I call it the technogod. I don't, there might be several, whatever, but basically, it's the. I have a sense that it's a very ancient entity, very, very ancient. I have a sense that many of the sort of, ET civilizations out there are more or less affiliated with that technogod. Because they seem to have, from what people tell us, they seem to have the behavior that looks like what they're trying to impose on us here, which is extremely difficult because there's probably no place in the universe that has as much human diversity and life form diversity as this planet. So, it may be that this technogod has had to go through a number of iterations elsewhere to practice, so that finally it could come and, try and grab us and our planet. I mean, I'm just speculating, but basically, it feels like, sometimes in dreams, there is this presence, and it can take all sorts of forms. So in that sense, if people perceive different types of gods within that realm, they can be, I think, different emanations of that one being. And it has to be finally, a one being thing, because it has that goal of unifying everything under its homogenizing, completely utilitarian kind of domination. So, I think it's only one single mastermind that can imagine this kind of project. So that's why, to me, it is a techno-mind and not one techno-mind God. I mean, there again, the word God is a problem, but there is a similarity between this techno-mind God and good old Yahweh, who, according to the Bible, the Old Testament, translated literally, is full of ET gadgets. And so, he feels like a kind of junior version of, what would be the techno mind in its glory, so to speak. So, it's none of this can be stated, in any completely unambiguous way, because, this techno mind thing, it expresses itself in all sorts of, all the different proliferating technologies that are happening now, that are occupying so many millions of scientists and technologists around the world. So, you've got the nano people, you've got the IT people, you've got the brain interface, machine interface people, you've got the artificial reproduction people. I mean, you've got all the war machines. It's just just the sheer number of these different, they feel like different avatars that are serving ultimately a single identity or entity that encompasses them all. So yeah, and the other thing is gods don't really do anything themselves. They're not created themselves. That's the other aspect. So, you know, the techno mind has to emanate entities that then can direct humans to do the work of creating the computer, the AI program, the nanotech, the whatever it is, graphene, this, that, and the other. So, you know, if you look at it in terms of that, of the way entities of a more subtle nature sort of materialize in concrete reality, then, well, there again, you know, it makes sense to have this one entity, the mastermind, whose mind is distributed in bits of minds that then control the minds of certain humans who do the work for them.
Yeah. I remember one sentence, I guess, if memory serves, I think it was Geordie Rose, who talked about the D-Wave computer, and he said something along the lines of, if you're standing there, you have the impression you're standing in the presence of God.
Oh, well, there you have it.
Yeah. And what you said with the ET aspect, I have said for a long time that a lot of the agendas that are being rolled out here are actually, yeah, ET based. Yeah. And funny enough, I listened to an interview of and I, your camera, your head was moving away. And now you're fine. Okay. So, yeah, he said he was in the Montauk Project, and he was used as a time soldier, and he lived for a while on a different planet. And he described it, what was going on there. And funny enough, they lived in cities that were walkable and that you could not get out of. Yeah, you know, this idea of the 15-minute city. Yeah. And he also mentioned that they completely erased more or less the middle class. There were the super rich and the poor. And the poor got a paste to eat that was made out of insects.
You don't say.
Yeah, and the now the regular people could not afford to go to a simple restaurant. He said a regular meal would cost you 13 months of your paycheck. And similarly to here, the narrative was, yeah, you are poor because you are stupid, you are not, you are lazy, you are not eager enough, you do not put enough effort, and it's all your fault. And I'm not saying that, of course, you have to put in effort into something, and yes, that's all true, but at the same time, we have to recognize the system is rigged.
Oh, of course, because I mean, the whole point is to have that very tiny upper class that does not need to make any kind of efforts and that relies on the very large proletarian class or peasant class to, you know, do the feeding, the cleaning, the making, the manufacturing, the sweating, the everything, and to, yeah, receive no pay or whatever. And this has been going on for millennia. You know, the middle class phenomenon is very recent.
Yeah.
So it is true that, you know, for most of this particular phase of human history, since Mesopotamia, I don't know about earlier than that. But basically, this business of having a very tiny upper crust that has everything and a large lumpen population that has nothing, that's, you know, that's been the rule for most of our history. So, and, you know, it has been the model that was successful for the upper class, But the thing is, during this whole thing, that sort of upper crust bunch of lazy, non-productive parasites has learned, well, pretty much nothing. Whereas the slaves, over the centuries and the millennia, have had to, well, they've had to somehow deal with, you know, the internalized, conditioned, crappy idea of themselves. And, you know, to some extent, because of that, I imagine that they bought into the religion, you know, of, okay, you have to be very good so that you can save your soul. In a way, when humans interpret that, so they are aspiring for something better for themselves. So they have a program, they have a plan. You know, for the parasite class, basically, we have to make sure that everything doesn't change. We may have to change the weapons of control. And, you know, we've already got them. They've already been invented, you know, from other civilizations. It's all there already. Whereas we've had to be creative with the crap situations in which we were landed. And, you know, I think that is part of the historical development of a conscious sense of ethics and morality, which may be the ultimate distinguishing factor between us and the gods. And especially this techno mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, you know, you could argue in kind of moral ways, okay, with the religious religions, it was full of morality and, you know, 10 commandments and rules of what you could do, not what you couldn't do. But then, you know, even with the god of money, there was a sense that if you worked hard, you were going to make good money. Even if you didn't. But, you know, there was a kind of redeeming possibility in working within the system of the god of money. That becomes less and less possible when you've got the god of science and the god of medicine who know better than you and who just, you know, use you as whatever, you know, their guinea pig or their test experiment. So, you know, the further you go into these, what I call secular religions, the further removed you are from the ability to strive, to work hard, to make those efforts that are going to build something out of your life. And that's, you know, that's where we're at. That's one of the really tragic parts of where we are at now, is, you know, the number of people who are completely disempowered. They're completely, you know, believing in the god of medicine, the god of injections, you know, and the god of machines.
Yeah. Would you say that in general, religion has prepared us to accept the technogod?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We needed to go through religious religion where we feared specific gods. You know, part of the fear was imposed by potentially those gods themselves, like Yahweh, who appears to have been really here, partly by the high priest class, organizing all the scriptures and all the, you know, the heavens and the hells and all that. So, you know, there's been that programming, but we've also fed into that. As long as it was a religious religion with a sense of an afterlife, you know, goals, virtue, you know, being good and all this kind of thing, you could still be a participant in this game. But when we went into the age of reason, you know, from the Renaissance on, well, we no longer believed that crap. And so we started going into the game of the gods of science, medicine and all that. And by giving our belief to those, well, we forgot that, yeah, I mean, you can have plants outside in your garden that you can use to heal yourself instead of going, you know, to get a poisonous pill or an injection. And so, you know, if you couple that with the fact that all this techno-science has given us quite a bit of convenience with machines that, you know, wash our dishes and, you know, all sorts of stuff, we have become softer than we used to be.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, because of convenience, we're also easier victims to fall into, you know, the trap of a techno-god, and to believe in it, of course. You know, if we don't believe that we can go outside, pick a few leaves of something and make some tea that will help with whatever it is that we're you know, suffering from, and if we, you know, believe that food only grows in supermarkets and, you know, all this kind of thing, it's well, we're agreeing to be painted into a corner.
Yeah. And talking about convenience, and that is, I mean, say its point, definitely the smartphones. And these days, you know, I see people staring into their phones, I don't know, like forever.
But this isn't even convenience, Judith. This is
No,
not
no, but people are so conditioned now to think they cannot live without that stupid phone.
Yeah, this is addiction.
Yeah.
It's possession. It's possession. They are possessed. They are possessed by the techno mind that has created these devices.
Mm. Yeah.
This is beyond convenience. Convenience is a stage, you know, and especially now with all the difficulties, this convenience is being taken away from us. So when you've been conditioned into convenience and you've become weak, you no longer know the tricks, the different things that you need to be able to survive in a world without all the convenience, then you're really stuck.
Yeah. It's it's really frightening, you know, here. Yeah, in Germany, we are not out of the woods with our energy crisis. And it is really disturbing how little awareness there is for people, and the really small percentage of people that is prepared if, let's say, a blackout that lasts for several days strikes the entire country. And it is especially those people that are unprepared and have no clue what to do and how to help themselves that will become problematic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course.
Because they will have panic. Everything that they are used to crumbled around their ankles. And yeah, they are used to, yeah, I go to the supermarket, I have this, that, and the other, and I'm not against that. But in reality, that this all functions, it's a very thin veneer. And it is very, very vulnerable right now.
Especially as it's very complex. I mean, you know, all the way all these conveniences have been organized, they depend on these supply chains that have, from point A to point B, and the place of production has to respond to all these sort of quality standards and sanity and, sanitary. I mean, it's just the complexity of the whole system.
Mm.
And, we don't, when we just go to the supermarket, we used to go to the supermarket, okay, and we just, buy the stuff we needed. We were not aware of that. Now some of us at least have become aware of that complexity. And, how can we replace that complexity with a different complexity that, one family or one community can handle without getting all the frills that you could get in the, complete globalized complex system. But yeah, I mean, the more complex a system, the more easily it crumbles when something goes wrong. So it, in a way, what's happening was waiting to happen. It had to happen. It's unsustainable, and it's just, and it's not in conformity with the natural complexity of the natural world.
Mm-hmm.
Which there again, the fact that the business of being addicted to the convenience of whatever, the supermarket, the cinema, this, that, and the other, has taken away from having any kind of appreciation and curiosity about the complexity of nature. And she does it all without making a fuss. So, there again, we're dealing with artificial complication in complexity versus an elegant, self-contained complexity in, okay, I mean, this planet just does stuff. And there again, it doesn't need to make a fuss. It's just the way life is organized has its own, rules and cycles and of time and space and interactions and cooperation. And well, sometimes, there is some competition between different agents in the natural world, but the whole thing works. And to imitate that, we have to invent incredibly complicated systems that actually violate the natural rules of natural systems.
Mm.
And that's where we're at now. So, that's going to be another part of it. We're going to have to relearn how to cooperate with, well, with nature and what I call the big lady downstairs.
So would you say that there is a connection between, let's say the realm of UFOs, ufology, and religion?
Oh, I think it's quite clear. I mean, yeah. I mean, the first point is to decide that, okay, UFOs are real, whatever. Other civilizations are real, they exist, we are not alone in the world. Okay, yeah. I imagine that, the people listening to your shows have already accepted that premise.
Yeah, it would be a huge waste of space if we were really the only one.
But on the other hand, I mean, I really appreciated the work of Trevor Constable.
Mm-hmm.
Because he made the whole UFO thing more cosmologically congruent and somehow natural by also considering interdimensionals or etheric beings. And that's where I don't want to limit my understanding or my perception of these things to only, the UFOs that
Mm-hmm.
that deals with, the material, the physical, things that fly out there, or the things that fly down, into Antarctica or what have you. Because some of them also have the ability, it seems, to appear and disappear. It's not, one thing is the possibility of cloaking, and another thing is, I find it very plausible that there's the possibility of instant, non-local teleportation mentally or consciously, and in the place of destination, the ability to manifest something tangible, be it a UFO or a being or what have you. So, there are all sorts of shades of subtlety and or materiality that I think we need to be at least aware of, until we can actually deal with them. Because, I mean, there are those people who've had contacts and abduction experiences with whatever, these ships, and, the crew of these ships, or who've been taken to different civilizations and other planetary systems or what have you. But you've also got the very widespread phenomenon of people experiencing, the presence of spirits. In the past, it was common for people in the Middle Ages to be encountering fairies and sprites in the forest.
Mm-hmm.
We've lost the sensitivity to those things, but they haven't disappeared. They're part of the natural world. So, we, I think, to have a wider scope, although it's completely, for the time being, I don't see that anybody is in a position to take it all in and to start classifying it, because we don't have the tools to measure these things. People who are contactees don't have the same kind of extrasensory abilities as the people who are channelers, as the people who do exorcism, as the people who, are constantly encountering ghosts, and the people who have conversations with animals. There are all these different shades between us and the actual ufology domain. And the ufology domain is, I think, just one small domain of the greatness of the universe, which, there again, the different theories of classification of everything that is in the universe, there again, a lot of it is pure speculation. So, we just, I think, need to have a very open mind for all of this.
Yeah.
And,
when you look at
UFOs being gods, UFOs being gods, well, interdimensionals being gods also, who would occasionally appear and then they would disappear again. Or, it can be so many different things that get interpreted as gods. It's really hard to, to say anything in a definitive way.
Yeah. And when you look at pictures, paintings from let's say Middle Ages, Renaissance, you will find a lot of UFOs in those paintings. So it's really phenomenal, and nobody ever talks about it a lot. But
I think some people do. Some people do,
Yeah.
But most people in ufology don't have an education in, European medieval and Renaissance painting.
Yeah.
But you do, so.
Yeah, then one did it long time ago, but one day I just Googled it and I was surprised how many unidentified things were in those paintings. And I don't think that they painted it, just because they were bored, or you know, they thought it would be a good idea. No, I think they painted what they saw.
Oh, for sure.
Hmm.
For sure, because I mean, but they also still had sensitivity that was much more multidimensional than our present sensitivities. You know, they spent most of their time without unnatural light. They spent most of their time listening only to basically, you know, natural sounds. And, you know, for them, at least until quite late in the Renaissance, you know, fairies and forest beings were perfectly real. So, you know, when something appeared in the sky that was not the shape of a natural thing, of course they noticed.
Yeah.
But I don't know whether there are any chronicles from the Middle Ages or the Renaissance that reports these things that people saw.
Yeah, and if there are chronicles, who knows who they are hidden?
Well, there again, yes. Yeah. Because, I mean, if they were painting them, somebody would have probably written something about them too, perhaps. Unless, you know, well, you know, you risked being excommunicated.
Yeah, yeah.
Or, you know, you were excommunicated and they took your manuscript and it went straight to the, you know, the basement of the Vatican. Yeah, okay.
Exactly. Where I assume that a huge chunk of the Library of Alexandria is stored as well.
Yeah, probably. I mean, a lot of
I
it was
don't think that everything was. Yes, probably a lot was burned, but I don't think everything was destroyed.
Oh, certainly not. And, you know, a lot of those things did not exist in just one copy.
Yeah.
So, you know, but a lot of the Library of Alexandria went initially to Byzantium, to Constantinople. And then was it, well, the Turks took Constantinople. So, you know, yeah, I'm sure some of it is in the Vatican and some of it must be in other places also. And there's also, you know, all sorts of lost knowledge, which probably exists in whatever manuscripts or what have you, in unexpected places, such as, you know, the Nordic countries, where the old traditions are radically different from those of the Middle East and the Mediterranean. And so, you know, those are still waiting for their, you know, their time to come out. There's that famous Bok saga, which, I mean, seems to belong to a very ancient lineage. And then there's the Erlinda from Friesland, which is claimed to be a fake, but it says things in ways that are very congruent with a certain mentality, ancient mentality of the peoples of the North. And you know, I think there's going to be more and more of an emphasis on discovering what that's all about. It's happening in Russia, you know, for their northern sort of origin or whatever it is. So all of these things, I think, are going to produce more interesting knowledge. And they will also widen our understanding of what the fucking gods were. And, you know, in cultures that may not have needed gods. And you know, I have this kind of, it's still just an intuition, but I think that a lot of the strife that has been going on in the world is a continuation of ancient strife between completely different worldviews between the North and the Middle East Mediterranean zones. You know, everything that we've been taught has to do with civilization coming from Egypt, Mesopotamia, and, you know, their successor things, you know, the Greeks and the Romans. But even the Greeks and the Romans, especially the Greeks, they had all sorts of stuff that came, and they said so themselves, from the North. Apollo was this god who lived in the North. He was happy up in the North, and he would come down. So I think, you know, there's a whole layer of history that may not be all that distant that will reveal to us something completely different out of the North. Yeah. And
yeah, that's very possible. That yes, of course, Mesopotamia and the entire Middle East and the Mediterranean, that was important for our development, for culture and what have you. But it's not the only thing. And that is usually what is left out.
Exactly. And it may be that, you know, there are other civilizations. And I mean, this is even true of India. Civilizations that they reached a very high degree of sophistication without making the same choices that the, you know, Judeo-Greek or Roman cultures made, which took us into a certain form of techno-materialism, where we are now, you know, at a dead end. You know, India is very clear about the UFOs, you know, in their background. It's all mythologized. It's all told in those, you know, great epic stories, but it's there. And, you know, they even have these manuscripts that tell you how to build a space rocket, you know, a spacecraft. So,
Vimana.
You know, so, you know, there is that layer there, but there is also this very sophisticated yet simple culture of the masses that, I mean, it's just, you know, we have only been able to see the residual end of that since colonization and post-colonization. But, you know, when the British went there, India was the most developed place in the world. I mean, including in agriculture. And, I mean, you know, their thing that we have to translate with the word religion, you know, the word religion does not correspond to the meaning of the word dharma. Dharma is, you know, correct, harmonious way of life. And it's much more organically natural to humans. And then the gods that they have, it's not the same kind of gods that we have out here in the West, or even the gods that we had in, you know, the Odins and, you know, all the Germanic and the Norman and the Nordic gods. They have, you invent a god. You needed a god to represent this or that idea. Just invent the god. You create your own gods there. And, you know, you can change gods. You need to acquire the quality of whatever, you know, Saraswati. Okay, you're going to be, you know, you're going to be meditating on Saraswati and chanting her hymns and her 1,000 names for a couple of years, and you acquire a quality of Saraswati. And then, okay, I've had enough of this. I'm going to go to Ganesh now. Or to, you know, there's even a temple where there is a god of flies somewhere in Northwest India. So if you need to develop the qualities of flies, you go and pay your respects to the temple of the god of flies. So gods are not at all the same beings as what we think in the West. So, you know, this also I think, puts in a different color on what we're thinking about when we wonder whether ETs and gods are the same thing. I think some of them are the same thing, but if you put these things in the context of how other cultures have developed their sense of the extra dimensional, then you may come to very different sort of, perceptions that make our Western perceptions, well, they put them in their relative place.
Yeah, it's a similar concept as in Buddhism. So let's say you want to work on your compassion. Your meditation teacher will most likely tell you to meditate on Chenrezig or Avalokiteshvara, which is the same entity. The first one is Tibetan language. The other one is comes from India. So, and so you have different Buddha aspects that you can focus and meditate on depending on what you wish to develop. So I'm familiar with that concept, but unfortunately, yeah, this this construct has taken its toll on Buddhism as well. And if you look into the subject of child abuse and Buddhist cloisters, oh my goodness. Yeah. So, and that is basically why I dropped anything that had to do with religion. Because at the end of the day, to me, and this is just my personal opinion, other people might be very happy in those religions, and that is their business. But to me, it's all pulling wool over the eyes.
Well, because they become, a guy like Gautama comes around and he sits under his Bodhi tree and he's been searching sincerely for decades. And he has this revelation. I mean, this is a great guy. And he wants to show other people that, okay, you sit under the tree and you can have this realization too. It's the same as Jesus, who says, okay, you say that I'm making miracles. Well, you can make greater miracles than I can. It's the human thing, okay? And the problem is that then you've got the priests and the this, that, and the other, and the kings, and they need to get together so that they can work together to better organize control over society with the help of a modification of the original guy or girl's original message, and they turn it into a system.
Yeah.
Which spirituality can never be a system. It's a completely personal, transcendent experience that you bring back into this world. And it's the constant to and fro between this embodied world and who we are as what I call cosmic beings. It's this to and fro that is the whole point of being here. So, I mean, I'm less diplomatic than you are about other people's sense of, religion. If they are in a religious system, they are in a system which imposes upon them a certain interpretation that serves the purposes of whom, as opposed to when you have your own direct experience. And when you have that direct experience, well, you can't live without it. You need it every day. And as you live with it every day, it grows and you discover more and more of the whatever, transcendental, subtle, this, that, and the other, which in turn brings back always more flavor to, I don't know, the beauty of nature, the craziness of the sky, whatever. And, it infuses constantly more meaning, more challenges and more meaning into this life. So religion, to me, since it has all around the world, including, based on this Gautama guy who never wanted to create a religion,
Yeah.
and he's not a god. But
No.
you know, all of these extraordinary experiences that have been relayed by certain extraordinary people have been turned into something that they were not supposed to be. But if we go back to the basics, you know, you strip away all the everything, then, well, okay, you know, then you can start picking up the real jewels. But the basic point is, the monotheistic religions have taken away from us the ability to be fully human, whereas in the East, the whole point was that you acquire a God inside yourself. And, you know, the great practitioner of whatever it is in India, in, you know, in Buddhism, would make you a perfected human who was higher in the hierarchy than the gods.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the essence of it.
This was the public hour. For full access of the entire interview, please join our Patreon community. Thank you.